Throw the slide up.
I think it goes forward.
Yeah.
Hello. Well, I'm not going to answer that question. So you may notice that I have nice color slides. I hope you can read them okay. And the reason I did that was I had it in black and white, and I thought this message is so somber. I have to put some brightness into it. So I colored the slides. Okay, we note that. Now, the first thing is it's about immigrants and the numbers of immigrants in trade unions. And this is a major issue, as you can see. I think it's the most dramatic change in the Irish labour market in the last 10 years. It's the proportion of non-nationals, I call them non-nationals, who work in the labour market in Ireland. It's now estimated at 27.5%. It's actually 27.5, not 27. I underestimated. And there were 500,000 non-national workers in 2025. So it's quite a substantial shift in our labour market. Now, the basic argument of this paper has already been made by both John and Daryl about the institutional framework, the bargaining institutional framework that exists in Ireland, which is quite weak and practically non-existent in the one sense. Okay. Now, the data source that I used from 2003 to 2025 is the Labour Force Survey. And the question they ask is straightforward: what is your nationality? And this is the question that the Labour Force Survey is catalogued around. This is the question I use, and it's broken into 5-6 groups, which, if I have time, I'll discuss later. And the question asked about union membership is whether the respondent is a member of a trade union or staff association. So it's pretty straightforward. The sample size, the number of observations is around 26,000, which is carried out by the Labour Force Survey. Apart from John's, the Working in Ireland, the UCD survey, this is the largest national survey we have, which asks about trade union membership. Is it dependable? Is it robust? Well, no, I'll go back. It's the best we have, and it's carried out by the CSO, and it's on a statutory basis, seemingly. I couldn't find out what this really meant. So 26,000 households are surveyed every quarter. And being involved in this survey is a statutory obligation. However, I think in general myself that it's probably an underestimate of the immigrants, the non-national population in Ireland. Because I'm sure what happens, I have a little doubt that the CSO, when they ask somebody to take part in this survey, people say, well, I can't do it, I can't speak the language, or I'm going to leave the country in 3 months or whatever. I would say we have an underestimation, because the figure that comes out for immigrants, non-nationals working in the Irish labour market from the Labour Force Survey is around 20%, which is considerably lower than the actual percentage in the market. So we have to take that into account. It's a reasonable estimate, but there's room for inaccuracy there. Some of the data. First of all, if you look at the middle line in the table, this is the number of people who are in trade unions. And between 2003 and 2025, there's little shift. And when it's graphed, it practically doesn't change. It goes up and down by 0.5% maybe. So I think this is actually, to some extent, a fairly positive message for the trade unions. They have actually maintained their membership. And if that was all that mattered, they would be fine. The problem is that if you look at the top line, the numbers in the labour market have increased hugely over the same period. So we have an increase over the period of, say, nationals, 30% increase in the numbers in the labour market. And as you can see with the non-nationals, it's off the scale. So the fact is that if the labour market had remained stable, that is, hadn't grown over the last 20 years or so, then union membership, union density would not have declined. So it's simply a question that they have maintained that membership, but haven't been able to push it out. Partly the reason being, obviously, that we have a changing labour market structure, shifting from being completely on a homogeneous group of nationals to a large group of non-nationals. Now, if you look at the bottom line, the union density for nationals declined from 38% to 28%. And for the non-nationals, declined from 17% to 9%. So in 2025, 27% of nationals are in a union, 9% of non-nationals. It's quite a low percentage. And there's obvious reasons for that, which we'll explore. The overall density is pretty similar to what John has found in the working in Ireland. It's around 25%, I'd say, probably accurate. Now, if you look at the union density in the private sector, I don't bother with the public sector because it's quite high, and I make a few comments. But if you look at the real story is what's happening in the private sector in Ireland. And it's a completely different situation. If we look at the members in a trade union, in 2003, there were 328,000 or thereabouts union members in the union, and the density was 29%. If we look at 2003, then we find the drop, 14% of Irish workers is the density level. So another big story here is not just a decline in the private sector, but if we look at the percentage of employees in the private sector who were members of a trade union, in 2003, 60% of private sector workers made up the members in the trade. Just a few observations on the immigrants, where they come from. And there's a big turnover in immigrants, and that's a problem for the unions trying to organise. In fact, over 300,000 immigrants left Ireland annually in the years between 2013 and 2024. And so there's a considerable turnover rate in immigrants. Nearly a third of immigrants tend to come, work for a while. We don't know how long. It's impossible to get the figures on it. Then they leave. So this presents a huge problem for the trade unions. Okay, I think, do I have anything else? Well, I was going to talk about the legal basis of trade unions. The other factor I'd like to one other factor that I'd like to mention, sometimes it comes up, is that asylum seekers, that they are an important factor in the labour market. They're not, actually. They, in fact, approximately 65,000 applications there. Just let me go on. Yeah. So they make up very few, about 6% of non-national workers in the labour market are actually come from asylum background. So they are, in fact, have no real impact on immigrants and the labour market as such. But the conclusion is, as I say, that there has been, obviously, from the figures, and not very happy figures really, but there has been a decline. So that's it. Thanks.
If I invite anybody with any questions to do so over a cup of tea, because we're